Today's episode of the GoldCast was recorded, half of it on Sunday, half of it today. So there might be a little bit of a timeline jump in terms of what we talk about. But we're glad to be back. We missed a week there, but we're happy. We're excited. Raymond, why don't you let them know where can they find us?
You can like us at facebook.com/thegoldcast. You can also follow us on Twitter @thegoldcast_. You can also follow us on Instagram @thegoldcast, and you can also subscribe to us via iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same title of The Goldcast. Like, comment, subscribe. We do appreciate it, and keep on listening.
All right, Raymond, we've got a fun episode today. We were gone for a week. I missed you. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm excellent.
Life's
Thank you for
good.
asking. We have a big episode for you. First, we're going to start off with our Super Bowl picks, and then we're going to talk some NBA, mainly Warriors, Celtics, and those pesky, or are they pesky? Cavaliers. But first, the GoldCast intro. Let's get busy.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Ray Solis the first, baby.
Boom! We're back. We were gone. We left you without a hot rhyme to step to, but now we're back. The Super Solis brothers are in the house. GoldCast. First of all, Raymond, welcome back. A little bit of a 1 week break there, but we are here. We are here. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Super Bowl. 1 week away. Philadelphia Eagles versus the fucking New England Patriots for the billionth effing time. They are here. This is an opportunity for Philly to get revenge on the New England Patriots after the 2004 loss. This is their opportunity. They got there in the most unlikely of ways, even though they were the number one seed. They had Nick Foles. No one thought Nick Foles was going to show up. He did in amazing fashion. Vintage 2013, 2014 Nick Foles was there. The Chip Kelly Nick Foles. And he balled out. He's finally gotten used to the system. And now Philly finds themselves in the final round against the New England Patriots. The line on this has moved back and forth several times. I want to know what you think about this particular matchup, Raymond. I want to start with you. As we all know, Raymond has a gift. We call it the whispers, the whispers, the whispers, the whispers. The whispers, the whispers, the whispers, the whispers. Sometimes the whispers are wrong. Many times they are not. Raymond, what is your prediction? What is going to happen this coming Sunday in Minnesota? How do you think that game's going to go down? Who do you think's going to win? I know who you want to win, but who do you think will actually win?
Well, the Whispers didn't do a damn thing good for me last week, as I thought Minnesota would really show up, and I also thought that the Jags would overcome New England. And to be honest, they dominated that game up until the fourth quarter when they changed from their base defense to a soft zone, which a quarterback like Tom Brady can pick apart all day. So they tried to play a prevent-style defense by giving such large zones yardage, and then Tom Brady just picked them apart underneath and just got big chunk plays and was able to put up enough points to overcome them, and the defense couldn't stop them at that point because they weren't playing a set that allowed them to stop them the entire game. So Jags really bit themselves in the foot. And on the other end, it was the Philadelphia defense that just completely dominated Minnesota, who was able to overcome New Orleans defense. And then likewise, New Orleans offense, which struggled against the Minnesota defense for the most part, even though that they were on the verge of losing that game, could not do a damn thing against Philadelphia. And I think that this is going to be much the same way against New England, albeit New England's offense is much, much more potent than Minnesota. So I do think they're going to put up a better fight. But I do think Philadelphia's defense is going to win the day, and they're going to dominate because the front, they can rush 4 and still put enough pressure on you and have enough guys in the backfield to really minimize New England's passing attack. And I think they're going to do that. And I think Tom Brady's going to have a really tough time getting the ball out on time and staying on his feet up time. And most importantly, stepping up in the pocket, which is what he does. He's not a scrambler. He's a guy that'll sit in the pocket, step up, make throws when it collapses on the edges. But Philadelphia does a great job of mixing it up and doing blitzes and stunts with his guys to plug up the middle and also apply pressure from the edge. So I think a lot of that's going to be happening. And I'm going to say exactly what I told another friend of mine, 35-17 Philadelphia.
Oh, my God. 35-17?
Yeah, we're overdue for a Tom Brady ass whooping. And there is no better place to have it done than the Super Bowl.
Okay, so let's talk about this. When this first all went down, I was like, "There's no way, man. Brady's donezo, baby. Brady is donezo." And I mean, I'm sorry, when I thought this was done, I thought Philly is donezo. Philly's done. There's no way that Philly's going to be able to beat them. It's too much. And like you, I started really thinking about that New England Jacksonville game. They literally could put no pressure on Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles was back there sending text messages, selfies, and emojis to anybody that could listen to him. Hey, look, I'm in the AFC Championship. You know, emoji, star face, little guy with the monocle. And that defense is horrendous. And Blake Bortles was a couple of bad passes and a couple of ref swallowing pass interference plays away from winning that game. The defense of Philly is, I believe it's second-ranked defense, is behind Jacksonville, right behind Jacksonville. Is that where it is? Minnesota was number 1 in the NFC, right? So, right? Or were they number 1? Does it go Minnesota, Philly, Jacksonville? Am I correct in that order of defenses? Yeah, I don't know. They're not a 49er team, so I don't keep those numbers as close as my head. You know, if you want to hear those, you got to go to the Minnesota, Jacksonville, Philadelphia cast, which is airing tomorrow somewhere else in the world. So anyways, I know Philly's somewhere there in the top 3. As again, I'm not a Philly fan. It's not my deal. It's not my cast. That's the Eagles cast. Different guys. But their defense can hang at that level. Nick Foles is not Blake Bortles. He's a much better quarterback. He is still a backup, but he has found his groove. He's found his system, and they've got such a strong system there. He just has to stick to it. My only fear with Nick Foles is that the moment gets too big for him, he starts getting nervous and fucking up. I could see that happening. You know, it's a tough to be under the microscope for the Super Bowl. Having said that, let's go back. You have a team like Jacksonville that was this close. You know who the New England Patriots remind me of right now, Raymond? They remind me of the Cleveland Cavaliers last year. In a weak-ass conference, weren't really tested at any point, really, in the post. Had a couple, got a little close, got a little hairy a couple places, but
that sounds a lot like Tom Brady's career. Never really tested.
Tom Brady, that should be the new one, TB12. Never really tested.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When has he ever been tested on the road to the playoffs? Give me a break.
No, rarely ever. So, like Cleveland, not really tested. No, they looked better than they were, and then they ran into the Golden State Warriors, who were a juggernaut. Literally sitting here, third, top 3 defense, top 3 offense. Philadelphia's got a top 3 defense, a top 3 offense. New England has a horrendous defense and a really good offense. Defense wins championships. That defense, if they give the time to Foles that they gave to Bortles, which I believe they will because that O-line's even better, I believe that plays into Philly's hands. If they chase Tom Brady the way they chased Case Keenum last week, that plays into Philadelphia's hands. I really started to think about this more and more and more. The type of offense that they play.
In yards per game, Philadelphia, and total defense, in terms of yards per game, Philadelphia is number 2 in the NFL, in the entire NFL. That includes AFC and NFC. In passing, Philadelphia is the number 5 ranked defense in all of the NFL. In rushing, Philadelphia is the number 2 ranked defense in all of the NFL.
Yeah, so it is number 2. Okay, that's what I thought. I thought Philly they were there at number 2. So the more I thought about this, I think New England looks better than they really are. And when you really watch that Jacksonville game, God, they were really exposed. They just were going against an inferior team. I think Philly's better coached than Jacksonville. I think they have a tighter offense. They have a tighter system. And I think that they've got a better quarterback than Jacksonville. And Jacksonville really had them on the edge. They played for 1.5 quarters, 2 halves in a row. They let the game slip at the end of the second quarter, at the end of the fourth. I don't think Philly will do that. I, too, give the game to Philadelphia, but I'm going to go. I agree that 35 is going to win it. That's so funny you said that. I agree, too. But I say New England 31. Tom Brady makes a big comeback. Tom Brady makes a big comeback in the end to make it interesting. But this is the caveat. Philadelphia has to play 4 quarters of football because Tom Brady is going to play 5 quarters of football within 4. He was going to go till there are 0 seconds left on the clock. He will keep coming and coming and coming. He will not stop. He will win the war of attrition if you back up for any second. They have to play 5 quarters of football in 4 because Tom Brady will. And if they can do that, if Philadelphia can do that, I'm saying there's a chance. What do you think about that?
There is a chance.
I'll tell you, not only that, his throwing hand is still injured. Don't give me this crap that 2 weeks from now it's going to be healed. 10 stitches. Give me a break. It's still going to be tender.
That clearly wasn't an issue, but I mean, we all knew he was going to get a cortisol shot or whatever it is. So
dude,
he's
he was
going to
so
be
hopped
numb
up
to
on stuff.
whatever pain he was feeling before.
100%. 100%. So I really do think this is Philly's game to win. They really can pull this off. Now here, Niner fans, GoldCast Nation, 49er faithful, let's talk about this for a hot second. We want Philadelphia to win. Because if Tom Brady gets a 6th ring, as many rings as Michael Jordan has in basketball, dude, and then they tied the Pittsburgh Steelers, they get to their quest for 6 before us? Dude.
Ugh,
no bueno.
So disgusting.
Oh.
So gross. So gross.
Oh, man. So gross. The worst. The worst ever. Let me tell you about what I'm doing, too. So I'm throwing we're calling it the Degenerate Gamblers Super Bowl Party. It's what it's called. $20 buy-in for chips. You get 20 chips. Everyone gets 20 poker chips. And we're doing live prop betting the entire game. So like someone throws out a bet, everyone goes in or out on it. For or against it. Everyone goes in or out. We're doing live prop betting. And then we're also doing squares, $10 buy-in for the squares. So that's kind of our new thing is that we just bet at every one of these events. We bet it at the Royal Rumble today. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I say Philly. Raymond says Philly. Raymond, you say 35-17. Explain that to me.
That's
Break
right.
this game down. Brady never comes back? What do you think happens?
No, he doesn't come back. He gets dominated. And Philly does not take their foot off the gas pedal. In a nutshell, that is what's going to happen.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope you're right. I say 35-31. GoldCast Nation, what do you say? What do you think's going to happen? Who do you think's going to win? Let us know down in the comments, man. The YouTube comments are always so live and direct. I love it. Speaking of, we are flipping to video. There's just been a couple little delays. It's been a little bit trickier. A couple delays. We are flipping to video. Early Feb. We got to push it back just a tad. Obviously, we're not on video right now. All right, so moving on, Raymond. Let's move on. We've got Warriors and Celtics on Saturday, which was 109-104 in favor of the Warriors. And then last night, we had Warriors And Jazz, final score 99-129 in favor of the Jazz. A little bit of a routing
wasn't even
there.
worth watching.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I think Saturday night was a sneak preview of the NBA Finals this year. And so I wanted to see what you think. Do you think the Boston Celtics will be there standing as the last team representing the Eastern Conference when we go back to the finals? Because I think the Warriors will go back. It's going to be a tough series, though. That Rockets series is going to be pretty insane. But do you believe that the Celtics can and will get there? What is your thoughts on that?
I think they can get there, and I think there's a good chance they will get there because Cleveland's just a mess. I'm not saying Cleveland won't make the playoffs. They just won't be the number one seed. I think they're going to be there. And I think no one else is really playing as well, as soundly as the Celtics are. So I think Cleveland maybe gets in there as like a 3 or 4 seed. I'm not even sure they get in as a second seed. You know, I just don't see it, especially now with Kevin Love. He's going to be out. He broke his hand last night. He's going to be out 1.5 to 2 months. So they're already depleted and kind of beat up, you know, with, you know, you have a skeleton of Derrick Rose there. You have the shadow of Dwayne Wade on the bench. So I don't expect them to really kind of put it all together, you know, minus all those pieces and what they've given up. So I think it's the Celtics to lose. And yeah, I think that is a good preview of the finals. I think Celtics would give the Warriors a good run for their money, but ultimately, especially once it gets to that stage, that's where the Warriors will really shine. The one thing that the Celtics will have going for them is Kyrie, because he's been to that stage 3 years in a row, having won one where he was, you know, the big clutch player in that series. So they'll at least have that going for them, you know, should they make it to the finals. But on the Warriors side, you have too many weapons, and that's what they're playing for. You know, this season, they're almost kind of sleepwalking through it in a fashion. Last night was one of those where they were not only sleepwalking, but sleepwalking straight into a wall. But the regular season, will be a little bit different because they'll be kind of like, they're like, all right, we already know we're good enough to get this. So, you know, a win like this, I lost like last night against the Jazz by 30 plus is obviously not good, but, you know, which means they're probably going to bounce back strong against the Kings, which is next on the schedule. But I think it was a terrific game. It was a playoff caliber game. Kyrie versus Curry seemed to take center stage. Klay Thompson didn't play all that well in terms of shooting. His defense is always very, very good. Durant was great. Draymond Green was terrific down the stretch, especially when they really, really needed him in those crunch time moments. But this was really kind of about Kyrie and Steph Curry. And Steph Curry outplayed him for sure. Put up 49 points. Kyrie put up, you know, almost 40, and I think he did 37. So, you know, there's a lot to say about these two players in terms of their offense, but, you know, Curry just was unstoppable. So whereas Curry yielded 37 from Kyrie, but the Warriors also do switch a lot, so it's not that Curry is constantly guarding him. And whereas Kyrie yielded, you know, 49 off to Curry, and, you know, they do a lot of switches over on the Celtics defense too, so it's not always Kyrie as well, just to be fair. But I think Brad Stevens is probably the next best coach next to, you know, Greg Papa, who's in his twilight of his career, probably the most accomplished of the elite coaches in the NBA. But I would say, as far as like in their prime right now, Steve Kerr is obviously in the middle of his prime, and then Brad Stevens is kind of the up and coming, you know, the runner up right now, and what he's doing over in Boston. And then who knows what'll happen when what's his name comes back? I forget his name. His name escapes me. Gordon. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it was a great game, and last night was just a shitty game. I could barely listen to it on the radio.
Yeah, it was just one of those games. Not something we should be all that worried about. Although right now the Cavs are third in the East. I really don't think they're gonna make it. I was looking at some stat. There was some stat. It was saying something about they're like second to dead last in defense, and they were saying that only 8 teams have ever even made the playoffs with that bad of a defense. I believe they're going to get to the playoffs no matter what because of LeBron James. But LeBron James has been years overdue for this kind of season. Am I right? Years overdue. Like the season from hell, the season where everything collapses, everything falls apart. Players, I mean, every year, I feel like every year it seems like the players on LeBron's team like secretly half hate each other the whole time. That seems to be a consistent issue from dating all the way back to the Heat and the Cavaliers. It just seems like there's always this like strange passive aggressive animosity culture that's kind of built amongst those players. It's always the impression I get. I'm obviously, I'm not there. I don't know for sure. It's just the eye test. It just always looks like there's just, LeBron's always kind of airing his dirty laundry and his annoyances online and on Twitter with these not so vague messages, or he's saying passive aggressive things to the press. And so there always seems to be like this tension on a LeBron James team. I mean, all the way back to the Heat. The Heat had the same thing. Cavs had the same thing. But it's like this is finally one of those years where the team has just collapsed on itself, and I felt like they were really due for that kind of a situation, and it plays right into the Warriors' hands either way. But yeah, they're just such a mess, and I think that I think Boston really has a chance here to make it happen. I think they're playing really well. The tricky part, of course, is can they beat LeBron 4 times in a 7-game series? That's easier said than done.
It is, but I think they can do it. They play better as a collective unit. They play defense, which is something Cleveland doesn't do. For some reason, it's foreign. But I think in a 7-game series, Cleveland right now, in their current state, if they were to play right now, they would only get maybe 2 games out of a series. If they're at full strength, then I would expect it to go to like 7. I think it has the capability of going to 7.
Yeah. What about Houston? What do you think? How much of a problem do you think Houston presents for the Warriors in the playoffs? You think that's a 7-game series?
I think they're as much a threat, as, I don't know, the Spurs. Spurs probably even more, but for some reason, Kawhi Leonard, they can't seem to fix that injury, that nagging quadricep injury. And so there's something going on there too. And San Antonio also can't get free agents to play around Leonard. So that's another thing too. That seems to be something that holds them back from going into the next era of their success. Houston Rockets are great. I mean, Harden put up 60 points. He had a triple-double, 60 points, 10 rebounds, 11 assists over the Orlando Magic last night. But they also are very inconsistent on the defensive end. And if you're just depending on a few players to have really good games, I understand that they beat the Warriors 2 out of 3 times this year. But one game's a wash because it was in the beginning of the season, which doesn't really matter. The last game, Clay and Curry and Durant, they all had subpar nights in terms of what they do on a consistent basis. So if you're playing the odds, the likelihood of them having those types of nights, 4 times in a 7-game series to allow the Rockets to win is highly unlikely. So if you're playing the odds, Houston's just doesn't have enough. They have enough offensively. They don't have enough defensively. And if they're going to rely on bad shooting nights from the Warrior stars, then that's not enough to beat the Warriors. You have to play defense as good, if not better, than the Warriors do in order to stop them. Because not only do they have 4 all-stars, one who's a Swiss Army knife in terms of offense, steals, rebounds, defense, blocking, but you also have 2 other defenders in Klay Thompson, who's an underrated defender, and Kevin Durant, who's having a career year defensively and is just as potent as he has always been offensively. And the same with Curry. Curry's obviously a little bit on the small side at 6'3", but is still one of the better defensive point guards in the NBA, not to mention the second and third unit mix and mashup of players that Kerr typically uses. He uses about 14 guys in his rotation. The Rockets use about less than half of that in their rotation. So not enough depth, and stamina to also keep up with the Warriors as well. So as much as people like to think the Rockets are a test, I think what they have over other teams right now is they just can outshoot teams. They're like the Patriots without a defense. They're just outscoring teams, and teams aren't playing good enough defense, and they're not defending the perimeter well enough, and that's why they're winning a lot. But in a 7-game series,
I agree.
I give it to the Golden State in 6. Houston's good enough to win.
Yeah,
2.
I think they're kind of they're a one-trick pony for sure. They're a one-trick pony. Okay, Raymond. So last thing we're going to end with, we were talking about this a little bit offline. We were talking about Roger Craig being snubbed in his final year of eligibility for the Hall of Fame, and I thought that was kind of whack. I thought he 3 Super Bowls, first running back to get 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving in the same season, 2,000 yard season, 3 rings. I just feel like there's less decorated running backs that are in the Hall. You didn't necessarily agree. Explain why.
Well, Craig doesn't necessarily have the collection of stats that you would normally expect out of a Hall of Fame caliber player. He had an 11-year career. Frank Gore's played 13 career years. I would give it to Frank Gore before I would give it to Roger Craig. Even though Roger Craig had, his best year was 1985, which was his 3rd year in the league. He didn't duplicate that season, which was obviously unique in the vein of that he caught 1,000 yards and also rushed for 1,000 yards. I think he should have gone to the Pro Bowl in 1986 because he also had 830 rushing yards and 624 receiving yards. He wasn't able to duplicate that many yards receiving ever again after that year. So,
well, Craig also first player ever to score 3 touchdowns in a Super Bowl. 14 years later, Marshall Faulk became the only other person to accomplish this feat of 2,000 and 2,000 for the St. Louis Rams. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but Marshall Faulk, if you look at the stats of Marshall Faulk has way more accolades to go along with that. Not just having duplicated what Roger Craig has done. Even Frank Gore has more. Frank Gore has 8,000 yard seasons. Roger Craig has 4? Actually, no.
I feel like if we're gonna put Gore in the Hall, I think Roger Craig should definitely be in the Hall if Gore's in the Hall.
Frank Gore has 9 1,000 yard seasons. Roger Craig has 3. Frank Gore has 5 Pro Bowl trips. Roger Craig has 4. Frank Gore is now a top 10 all time on the rushing list. Roger Craig is not even in the top 20. So
Craig has 3 rings. Gore has none.
Yes, but it's not just about rings. There's lots of players that have 3 rings that are not in the Hall. I understand that that's part of it, but Marshall Faulk also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 7,000 yard seasons.
7 Super Bowl rings. I'm just kidding.
He has 7 Pro Bowl appearances too, so he has almost double what Craig has. Obviously more than double in terms of rushing yard productions. He has 12,000 yards. So, he does have 3 rings, which is something Craig will always have over Marshall Faulk and Frank Gore at this point in his career. So, because he's not going to win, he's not going to play 3 more seasons, and he's not going to win 3 Super Bowls in a row miraculously. So he'll always have that statistic, but it's the body of work, not just like the main points of accolades, in his case, 1,000, the 2,000 season, the 4 Pro Bowl trips, the 3 Super Bowl rings. You need a little bit more than that. Frank Gore's got with the exception of rings, he's got a better body of work in terms of rushing yard production. He was also a pretty darn good receiver, especially in the early half of his season. He was averaging almost 400 yards receiving a game with the 49ers between 2006 and 2010, which was awesome. It was a little less of that during the Harbaugh era because he was more of the power runner. He became more of a power runner in that scheme. But this is a guy who can catch too. And Roger Craig was a terrific threat in the receiving game, but obviously those numbers tapered between 1990 and 1993. But his best years, were obviously with the Niners. However, I just don't think there's enough there. Would I accept him if he did get voted in? Absolutely. He's obviously in the Hall of Fame for the Niners, which is, the next tier down. So he at least gets that, and he'll be recognized forever within the Niners organization. But in terms of the grand scope of, things, he just doesn't make the cut. Now, you could make a case considering that Terrell Davis is in there and Roger Craig is not, because they've got some similarities there. And Terrell Davis didn't even play that long. Terrell Davis only has 3 Pro Bowl trips. He had 2,000 yards rushing in 1998, and he only played from 95 to 2001, and he's in the Hall. So I think that's a pretty good average. That's a pretty good argument to make, in terms of probably the imbalance. If they allow somebody like Terrell Davis to get in there, but not Roger Craig, who's more decorated and has a better body of work than Terrell Davis, who pretty much just had 4 really good seasons out of, the 8 that he played, then yeah, I think Roger Craig gets in there or should be in there.
I that's what I said at the beginning. There's running backs that are less decorated that are in the Hall. I think that's whack as hell that Roger Craig has been snubbed in his final year of eligibility. I did not like that. I was like, really? Come on, man. But anyways, I digress.
Who was picked in favor of him?
I don't know who was picked in favor of him this year. So, Raymond, before we go, why don't you let them know where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ray Solis. You can also follow me on Instagram at Ray Solis1.
Boom. You can find me on Instagram, Rudy Solis 3. You can also find me on Twitter at Rudy Solis 3rd, Rudy Solis 3RD. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis 3rd, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the First, baby.
Boom. We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.
This is the Gold.